founders. Welcome to another episode of the Gab Lab. This is a show that is designed to bring you financial intel and insight that will not only blow your mind, but it will build your bottom line as well. I'm your show host, Tanya Woods Richardson, and today we are joined in the lab by special guest Stefanie Ricchio. Stefanie is a chartered professional accountant, CPA. She's also the founder and CEO of Stefanie Ricchio Business Consulting, Inc. Now, why I'm thrilled Stefanie has agreed to join us in the lab today is because this episode specifically corresponds with day 5 of the Wake Up Call Challenge. And why this is so powerful is because in day 5 of the challenge, our founders have done all the heavy lifting to understand all their personal numbers. And day 5 now actually reveals how much does the business truly need to pay the founder every month to ensure their financial security and safety and stability at home. Now, for many founders, when they go through this exercise, there's this feeling of overwhelmment, I think, is a big piece of it. How is the business ever going to be able to get me in a position where I can start taking that out every month and bringing it home? So Stefanie's here today to join or to share with us, her 5I methodology. It's the 5 I's that really become essential to us understanding and owning and interpreting the value that we bring to the business. In many senses, in many cases, it is our performance scorecard. So make sure you got a pen and paper. You're going to want to take notes for this. And now sit back, enjoy, relax, and I'll see you in the lab. All right, Stefanie, welcome to the Gab Lab. So great to have you here today.
Thank you.
So founders, this episode is going to correspond with day 5 of the Wake Up Call Challenge. And I know that many of you, as you've come to day 5 now, you've done the numbers, you've had the courage to look under the carpet, sweep out all of that debt, put together a debt repayment plan, figure out your tax strategies, your spending strategies, as well as sharing. And now you've come to the realization that your business needs to pay you X amount of dollars. So most of you are going to be a little apprehensive around that number. And so today we're joined by Stefanie, who is Stefanie Ricchio, chartered professional accountant, right? CPA.
Correct.
CGA stands for?
Certified General Accountant.
And out of curiosity, what's the distinction between the two?
Initially, we had 3 types of designated accountants in Canada, CGA, CMA, CA. They amalgamated in 2012. And then at that point, we all became under the umbrella of CPA.
Okay.
So now we are all the same.
Thank you for that clarification. Sometimes with the acronyms, we try to follow along.
Course.
So Stefanie, you're here today to help our founders brave that new number that they've uncovered. And Stefanie, not only are you an accountant, but I've got to go through my list here. You're an academic advisor, advisory member with CPA Canada. You are an educator. Was it Guelph University?
Guelph University, okay. Sheridan College, and also within CPA Canada proper.
Wow. Okay. Author of a book titled Beyond the Numbers, Seeing Your Value and Leading from Where You Are. And you're also a founder. You have your own practice currently, correct? Stefanie Ricchio, Business Consultants, also known as the Modern Accountant. And I'm curious, Stefanie, what is a modern accountant? I'm curious where that term comes from.
So, I mean, it all kind of plays nicely together. And it's really about understanding that we change and the way businesses operate change. And traditionally, accountants were people who only focused on accounting and making sure we could close the books and all the financial reporting, and great. But in the 21st century, what businesses require of someone like me, who is an accountant, is also technology. How do we build the systems that will give us the financial reporting that founders need to make the best business decisions? And so I just realized that as I was progressing, I was doing so much more than closing the books or talking about tax. It was building, and I was living and breathing. I do it every day in technology. So we have to modernize to really be successful today. And so that's really kind of where that came from.
Well, founders are lucky that you're there to help them better understand their numbers and the technology, as you mentioned, to be able to evaluate their numbers and
Yes,
then make good decisions going forward with them. So thank you for the work that you do.
absolutely.
So I'm
Thank you.
curious, you're an accountant, and then all of a sudden, to me, and especially in the tech space, you decide to write a book called Beyond the Numbers, which is all about seeing and understanding our value. They seem like different sides of the coin to me. One's very technical, mechanical, objective, and the other one's a little softer, maybe a little bit more, um, um, what's the word, subjective, and it's got the psychiatry kind of associated with it. What made you kind of switch or look at the other side of the coin? What was the catalyst for that?
Unhappy people. So, in the nature of the work that I do, whether I'm talking to a founder of a small business or I'm talking to a CEO of even a larger company or just an associate who works for either or, a lot of people would just tell me that they wish they could do more. They wish their jobs could be better. They wish they could earn more money. They wish their business could grow in numbers. And I really just kind of started to think about my experience and, how I achieved success, but how the businesses that I've been working with, how they did. And I just started to realize that there was this common layer, which is the five eyes that's in the book, that if we ask ourselves these questions and we look at ourselves from this lens, that we can probably build something of more value and find more success. And so I thought, why not bring this to market and share it with people? And I mean, it's been shared around the world. It sells on Amazon and all of that. And it's been great to just kind of take that experience that I've witnessed firsthand and put it in other people's hands.
Beautiful. Okay, so let's dig into that then. So you have a method specifically that you've come up with called the five eyes, and maybe you could walk us through
Sure.
that, because I know everything you just mentioned about not seeing their value and the unhappiness. I don't want to put words in our founders' mouths here, but I know a lot of them are discontent and yes, not earning what they need to be earning. The business isn't paying them, and you've probably seen this too, where most businesses
Absolutely.
don't even have the bottom line profit. So
Yes.
tell us about the five eyes. What are they, and
Sure.
how can we implement them?
Perfect. So the five eyes are impact, influence, information, interconnectivity, and integration. And so I kind of started to witness as I talked to more and more people that a lot of people really couldn't answer the question of how do I impact the business? What are my influences onto the business and what influences me in relation to the business? Information. What information do I need to be successful? What information do I have to give to keep the machine moving? Interconnectivity. Do I understand what my role is and how it's connected throughout the business? And lastly is integration. Do I understand how to bring it all together? And what I started to realize is that if you can't answer those questions, you've already identified where you need to spend more effort to learn more about yourself, but also about the business. And so it's really a matter of applying this framework and saying, if it's you as a founder, where do I make the greatest impact? What are the greatest impacts to me from a financial perspective, from a people perspective, from a process perspective? And the correlation really is when we're talking about trying to get more money out of the business into our founders' hands, is that a lot of that money lives in OpEx, right? When we don't understand those layers of those five eyes, we're probably burning money that we don't need to, but we're just not aware. So by answering those questions, we can really start to find the gaps.
So I'm just going to clarify, because I know some founders are probably like, OpEx, what's that? And so operational expenditures, right,
Sorry,
is
yes,
indirect costs. Yeah, no, it's okay. I'm just making sure that everyone's on the
absolutely.
same page.
Sure.
So just to clarify again, so the five eyes, we have impact, influence, information,
Correct.
interconnectivity, and then integration.
Exactly. Those are
Okay.
the five eyes.
So if I imagine you're okay kind of digging into each one of these
Yeah,
a
of
little bit
course.
for our
Sure.
founders.
Yes.
So I'm sitting here and I've completed the wake up call challenge. And now I recognize that the business needs to be paying me hypothetically speaking, let's say it's $10,000 a month. I have a business that might have 5 employees. Let's say it's making 500,000, but squeaking out a net profit. Maybe I'm even like barely breaking even. Maybe I'm from a deficit position. What questions should I be asking myself to your point, evaluate my impact? Is it the impact of the business, or is it my impact specifically?
You as an individual, right? Because you have to think of it from the perspective of, if I can understand what I do, me as a person within the organization, I can implement the changes that I need to make. So your impact as a founder could be on your associates. Are you giving them access to what they need to be able to do their jobs well? If the answer to the impact you have on your team is negative or it's no, they're probably burning cash by working more than they need to, by burning through materials that, you could have more waste or more inventory shrinkage or more service time if you're a service-based business. And so what is the impact that the choices that I make have on my team? What is the impact that I have on my customers? Are you, the ultimate person, for example, in customer service before you can, or even let's say a contract? Are you that endpoint in dealing with the customers? And are you doing it to the best of your ability? What is within your control when we talk about impact within your organization and outside?
Okay. How would you suggest someone go about answering that? Is that really where you want to get a coach involved to be able to explore? Because that sounds like, to me personally, it sounds like a loaded question. I'm trying to figure out where I would even start with that question.
And so what I kind of break it down to is into 3 pillars. To me, to be successful in business, you have to build a foundation. And the first pillar is the people. The second are your processes. And the third is technology. So when we say apply the 5 I's and think about it, I say in the context of those 3 areas, so that you can build a foundation and say, I understand what my impact is on my people in the processes. And that's a big one for founders, because you have to remember that for founders, our business is very personal, right? And so we start the business and we develop processes and we get really fixated. And this is where the mindset of it starts to kick in, right? We get fixated on an idea of what we think success for our business is. But a fixed mindset and success really don't always play nice. And so when we think about process and what we started, this is always an opportunity where maybe we need to think about a growth mindset and say, hey, am I making the best decisions from a process perspective that are going to allow the business to grow? And if I can allow the business to grow, then paying myself becomes a much more probable outcome. But if I'm fixed, and I see it all the time where we get so stuck on an idea that we don't want to let go because it might feel like a failure. But sometimes that pivot, and we've heard this word a lot in the last couple of years, this pivot is actually what you need to do to really help the business. So process is probably one of the biggest areas where a founder has the opportunity to start to, impact and create some change. And then, of course, it's technology, bringing in the resources that you need to make your business run with what's happening in the world of business today. So you're not drowning in paperwork and making little impact on the business, for example. Right? Okay. So that's kind of how you start to apply. If you use the 3 pillars and you start to ask yourself those 5 I questions, you can start to see where your gaps are.
So as I'm wrapping my head around this, tell me if I've got this right, because I'm taking your language and applying it to where I know many of the founders in the Wake Up Call Challenge, what we talk about and how we talk about their infrastructure. So people get it. Absolutely. The processes, would that be the same almost as the role and the efficacy of the responsibilities that those people have? Because I see a lot of founders getting stuck in minutia. And many founders should be out there rainmaking, right? Like, go get that. So I'm on the right page with that.
Absolutely. That's absolutely true. Yes.
Awesome.
Definitely.
And then the technology, I'm equating that to automation. how can you really start to streamline these processes so that they're running smoothly? Everything's just, it's going according to plan without all the manual labor that's required and slowing things down.
Exactly. And,
Okay.
one of the other overarching high level themes is always looking at everything within the business from the lens of value added work and non-value added work. And the more we have ourselves and our team doing non-value added work, again, there's your OpEx, there's your cash, those are your bottlenecks. And so the more we start to ask the questions and say, where do we have the potential to create value and implement process changes or even small tech solutions to eliminate the non-value added tasks, everything starts to cycle through the business better, right?
I get it. I get it. I get it, Stefanie. Okay, I'm on the same page. All right. And when you talk about value, that isn't just necessarily sales, right? And revenue, it's
Correct.
about impact that customers are feeling. And okay, brilliant. Okay,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm with you. Okay, so
And that's,
second, oh, yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying that's a really good point because I think something or somewhere that a lot of founders get stuck in is that we think that if we get the customers in, that that's enough.
Mm,
The ultimate goal is customer retention, and
mhm.
that's how you scale and that's how you grow. And what we don't realize sometimes as we start the business and we just, hit the ground running is that a lot of our back end processes, what happens in your customer service department, how you deal with returns and credit memos and disputes, all of that stuff can leave a very negative taste in your customer's mouth. So it's not just about that preliminary getting them into your platform or your ecosystem. It's about keeping them in there. And that's where your people, your process, and your technology will start to pay those dividends, right?
Beautiful. Such an important point. I think that that corresponds with in our financially fierce formula, in our step 6, we do a marketing map. And that last pillar of awareness, engagement, interest, sold is the committed, right? And to your point, it's true. A lot of founders kind of leave that piece blank in terms of strategy because they're so determined to bring the client
Yes.
in that they fail to kind of recognize the relevance and significance of keeping that client and creating raving fan out of them.
And I think that that's honestly part of it is just the messaging that really is so strong right now for business owners and founders. It's
Mm,
we talk so much about getting that growth, that top line growth, and getting those customers in, getting them in. But we really, and that's what we call the front end of business, right? But we seldom really focus on the back end. And so it's not surprising to me. But I think it's a shift that we have to take because you could have the best customers or you could have the best product or service,
mm,
but if you really can't close the cycle of order to cash,
mhm.
it's difficult.
Yeah, so valuable. I think especially as we move into some uncharted territory here in the next couple of years, right? Leveraging those
Absolutely.
relationships. Okay,
Absolutely.
second eye, influence. Walk us through that one.
Right. So here you can just take a snapshot of yourself and really think about who can I influence within the organization to do better? And that to me is probably more straightforward, right? If I can influence my team, if I can be a strong leader, if I can be a leader with a growth mindset, and I can influence my team to work better, if I can teach, if I can model and demonstrate what it means to run, I want them to run the business the same way that I would, then influence them in a way such that they do that, right? So that's internal influence. But we can't discard the fact that we have external influences. These are the customers, our vendors, our suppliers, the government agency, all those stakeholders. Do we have what we need in place within our business to successfully maintain those external relationships, that influence? Because CRA comes in with an audit. That's a negative influence on your business. Your vendors, if you don't have a positive relationship with your vendors or your suppliers, and they hold back on your procurement, that's going to impact your business, right?
Mm,
So you have to kind of get a sense of, what are the influences internally and externally to my business? And that helps you again put in the measures and the processes in place to mitigate risk. And that's really what influence kind of tries to assess your risk level that you can control.
right. It reminds me a little bit of a SWOT analysis as you were speaking there.
Yes.
It's like, oh,
Sure.
I can see the
Yeah.
parallels. And I wonder too, you know, do you suspect that influence is almost like corporate culture where it happens regardless of the concerted effort you put into it? So if you're not putting a concerted effort into it, you're still having influence that might just be negative,
Absolutely.
right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. All
It's a
right. So
great
that
point.
one's a little easier to wrap our head around.
Yep.
Information.
And this one is a big one. So, if you're a founder, and especially if you need to obtain financing, or um, more so, I think for the cash purposes or growth and development, um, you need to understand the information that you need within your business. That's probably one area that I hear a lot from founders is they don't really get involved too much with the finances. I go through the year, we do what we do, we send it to the accountant, and then at that point, I kind of get a sense of where we're at. And to make decisions and to be successful in business, you need to look at your information on a regular basis. I would love to say that that wasn't the case, but you really have to start to teach yourself the importance of having access to your information, and having it in real time. And so it's information. Yeah.
I'm really curious about this because obviously this is the work we do with
Sure.
founders. We have a conversation with them saying, listen, do not abdicate to your accountant, right? Your accountant certainly helps with your year end.
Yes.
They're there to mitigate taxes, but you are an accountant. So how do you push this back on the founder to get them to take responsibility of their numbers and understand the information? I'm curious how you do that.
Sure. I mean, we highly encourage them to implement a system. So
Okay.
whether it's something as more simplified as a QuickBooks, if that meets your business needs, great. Or do you do a very implement a very starter level of an ERP system, and the dividends that that will provide to a business for a lot of organizations is significant. And so we really encourage that you have a system of record that you go to every day, and every week look at your customer reporting metrics, look
Mm,
at your aging, because you need to know what money is outstanding, your payables, what you need to pay, your cash flow statements, your balance sheet. Learn what the balance sheet is. That's a big gap for a lot of people because, again, we focus so much on revenue and the income statement that I think you mentioned something about debt earlier, and really regularly looking at your balance sheet to understand your cash to debt position. It's very important because why would you want to wait 12 months only to have a negative surprise? And it happens all the time. Inventory turn for product-based businesses. So we really push and say, get a system. We'll help you set it up. We'll train you on how to use it. We'll help you close the year, absolutely. But this is to me something that should always be in-house, and you
mhm.
can do it for again, you can do a introductory implementation that has less cost than a full-blown implementation that's hyper customized. But it
Mhm.
gives you so much power to just run those reports on a daily basis. You have a dashboard. I mean, it's your financial literacy. Don't fear it, right? Don't fear it.
Music to my ears, Stephanie, music to my
Right?
ears.
No, I
You
get
know,
it. I get it.
I th I think you brought up a really important point about hiding from the numbers because they're afraid, right, of the negative consequences, or they're afraid of what their
Yes.
numbers are going to tell them. We see it all the time. And, our feedback to that is that hiding from the numbers doesn't make the situation better. It's when you can actually see the reality of the situation that you can get to work on fixing it, right? So
And
move on
and
that.
sometimes it mitigate like the risk level, the longer it takes to uncover a problem, right? Again, if you are inventory based and you don't know that, inventory is really slow, it's not moving, and your procurement team is still buying this inventory, you shouldn't be selling it. And you don't know until 12 months later, right? That's
Right.
a gap. And I
Mm-hmm.
guess same with customers. Do I have customers who are not paying? And these balances are just increasing. And then what happens when you send your information to your accountant? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
we've got to do a write-off because collectability is estimated very, very low. So looking at this,
And before we move on to the next we've got two more. And I think if you're okay for time,
of
I'd love to
course,
ask you this question. A lot of our founders expect the accountant to provide them with the financial analysis, the financial feedback around here's what your numbers are telling you, here's what we recommend you do this quarter. Can you give me your perspective on, is that the accountant's role, or is that the role of the CFO, or is that actually the role if the founder doesn't have a CFO? What falls on the founder versus what falls on to the accountant?
I personally say it should be internal. You should be addressing these every month as you close your business,
Mm,
every week as you're making decisions about services, product, staffing, everything under the sun. I think to defer it to the accountant, again, to your point, what if that's a quarterly review in business? 3 months is paramount. Like that's not a small amount of time.
mhm.
And so if you want to bounce an idea off your accountant, absolutely. I have clients who do that all the time when I'm building their systems and I'll recommend A, B, and C. They'll say, let me go talk to my accountant and see what they think. But then together we work and we put in the solutions so they understand and they can be the decision makers that they're supposed to be, right? You
Beautiful.
don't want to create a dependency on the accountant.
Yeah, so important. Thank you for sharing that, because I know
Yeah,
we do get a
absolutely.
lot of pushback from founders expecting the accountants to be the ones that do that. So you heard it here. All right, interconnectivity.
And this one for me is super important, right? And so beyond the numbers as a whole for the book is really a framework that says, if I understand what finance has to do with sales and procurement and logistics and marketing, my assessment and my understanding of the business and how it's interconnected goes from here to here. And that's value add immediately because we eliminate what we call silos, right? If you have someone who's only focused on sales, or if you're a founder and you're the person who's really focused on sales or getting the right product developed or building out your services or anything of that sort, but you're not thinking about what it takes to deliver or what it takes to manage the customers or what's happening again on the finance side, like we just talked about. You're kind of, you're way too high, not even 10,000 feet view. You're
Mm,
probably 50,000 feet. So when you start to come down and you ask about how the work that you're doing is interconnected across the organization,
yeah,
it just, it's very eye opening. So interconnectivity is really just understanding how all of the moving parts come together and to build
brilliant.
better processes so that everyone can come together. You don't want everyone to be operating as a standalone department within your organization.
Yeah,
Because if A doesn't know what B is doing and C doesn't know what D is doing, how do you reach the company's overall objectives if everybody is so independent instead of interconnected?
yeah. Great point. And it reminds me too, I can hear a lot of founders likely saying, well, I'm too small, I don't have specific departments. But I think if this is one thing that you get right from the very beginning, right, with small teams, even if it's one person that's
Doesn't
heading up
matter.
each
Yeah.
department, you can grow into that interconnectivity versus waiting till you've got 50 people in a department and trying to
That's
manage
right.
300.
And
Yeah.
that I'm so glad that you said that because that's really it. Again, this is you asking these questions to build the foundation for your scale, for your growth.
Yeah.
So it's people, process, and technology. And you always want to think about that interconnectivity across all parties so that, like you said, one day when you do grow to 50 people, you've already got the processes in place to move information between everybody, to make sure that there's no bottlenecks, right?
Mhm.
Bottlenecks happen when we're not interconnected.
Mm.
So it's really important to think about it. It doesn't matter if you're 5 or if you're 50 or 100, you want to achieve that because the business cycle is interconnected. It's not independent.
Perfect. Okay. Great point. And our last I is integration. So this sounds to me, it sounds a little bit like the interconnectivity, but I guess the integration is that like the implementation as well. Maybe walk us through
Yes,
that last I.
exactly.
Okay.
Absolutely. So integration truly is the bringing it all together. It's the bringing together of your people, your processes, and technology. But also, again, when you think of yourself as a founder and you're teaching and you're leading and you're coming up with ideas for growth and for scale, it's that you do so from the vantage point or with the idea of, I want an integrated business. I want to have all of us come to center to support the organization as a whole. Because if I don't do that and I just think about myself and what I want for the business, and I don't think about integrating us collectively, then your ability to achieve success when you're only worried about yourself becomes, X times more difficult. And so integration is really about continuing to maintain focus or start to develop a focus on how to integrate your all the components of your business to achieve the success that you want.
Okay. All right. And so when we go through these 5 I's, I'm curious then. So they're going through the impact, the influence, the information, interconnectivity, integration. To kind of bring this full circle, they're finishing step 5. They recognize they need to be paying themselves 10,000. Is this almost like a performance scorecard?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
That's exactly what it is. That's
Okay.
exactly what it is. And it's something that you would do for yourself as a founder
Yeah.
to say, I see my gaps. I see where I've been ignoring the business and I should be paying more attention. And it's also something that you can then model as an assessment of a performance assessment for your team to say, do my team members understand the vision for this company? Because remember that if they don't, the chances of your success growing at the rate that you want decrease. And again, to be able to pay yourself means that we need to have that trajectory of growth. And so that's how they all kind of come together. So absolutely, it is a performance assessment. That's exactly what it is.
I love it. And you just mentioned something else that I think is key is that, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe even before you start this process, really locking in on mission and vision. Like, what is the objective of the business? Really, what are you looking to achieve? I know when we start this process with founders in the financially fierce formula, what are you building, by when, for whom, with what impact, and then what products and services? Like, they have to lock in on those 5.
Yes.
And then it sounds like this is just a great evaluator to say, are you actually being able to get those objectives met through these 5 I's?
Absolutely.
I love
Absolutely.
it. Stephanie, that's brilliant.
And then after you complete this assessment, what I think that you'll walk away from is really understanding 6 fundamental attributes: your relationships, productivity, personal success, right? Which could be growth, it could be financial, then solutions, motivation, right? So to maintain your motivation, but also motivate your team. And then lastly, of course, the organizational needs. So it's really to me, it's the pillars of people, process, technology. Get the answers to those questions by assessing through the 5 I's, and then walk away with these 6 attributes so that you can, go off and do the things that you set out in the first part of this process. Right?
I love it. Stefanie, thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom on today's call. Insights and intel for sure.
My pleasure.
Everything that you just shared with us, especially those last 6, because we went through those quite quickly, but are all of those in the book, Beyond the Numbers?
The last 6, no, not yet.
Okay.
I'm looking to do a rewrite, but I will prepare something that I can share with you and your founders. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, perfect. I'm going to pick up the book. I'm going to read it through. I should have done that before the call.
No worries.
I should have done my homework there, but I'm excited to pick up a copy. I know you've given a lot of founders a really solid framework here, not only for understanding how to measure their value, but their performance scorecards. I'm sure a lot of them have just said, oh, I've got it now. I've got it figured out. You saved them a lot of time and money.
Perfect.
Thank you, Stefanie. All right, we'll leave it there. Founder Stefanie, thank you again for being on the call. Founders, this is your day 5 of the Wake Up Call Challenge. And I know that after listening to this episode, you'll be more motivated than ever to make that number happen for yourself. And now you have the tools to actually be able to do that. So thank you for joining, and we will see you in the next episode of the Gab Lab. Bye for now, everybody. Stay fierce.